Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're tackling what is honestly the absolute biggest anxiety for urban apartment renters and city dwellers who are looking at the future of mobility. Think about it. You want an electric vehicle, you're all in on the tech, you love the environmental benefits, but then you look around and realize, hey, I don't have a private garage. I don't have a dedicated driveway. So, the elephant in the room. Can you actually pull this off without a home charger?
So, let's just get right to that pressing question. The short answer? Yes, it is absolutely possible to own an EV without home charging. But, and this is a massive but, it requires a complete fundamental shift in how you view the very concept of fueling. It completely stops being about making a quick, reactive trip to a gas station when you're on empty, and it starts being all about how you manage your time and your environment.
To figure out if this lifestyle is for you, here's our roadmap for this explainer. We're going to cover the garage-free EV dilemma, break down the real cost of charging, look at the always-be charging method, hear some real-world workarounds, cover winter and infrastructure pitfalls, and end with your own personal EV readiness check.
All right, let's jump right into part one, the garage-free EV dilemma.
As we all barrel toward this fully electric future, lacking private infrastructure is a huge structural hurdle if you live in a high-density urban area. Because, let's face it, it's a completely different ballgame when you can't just plug your car in and go to sleep. And this leads us to something analysts call the range fallacy. This is without a doubt the biggest mistake prospective EV buyers make. They stare at a spec sheet, totally obsessed with buying a car that has 300 to 400 miles of headline range, but they completely ignore their own daily habits. Look, daily EV life is shaped way more by your charging access than by your battery's maximum capacity. A car could have incredible range on paper, but if keeping it charged doesn't fit seamlessly into your actual life, it's just going to become an incredibly frustrating burden.
Which brings us to our second point, the real cost of charging.
Because without that cheap, predictable overnight home charging, your total cost of ownership, your TCO, can become really volatile really fast. There's a stark cost differential at play here. Domestic charging gives you a stable baseline of roughly 15 to 20 cents per kilowatt hour. That is your absolute optimal scenario. Now, if you move to public AC chargers, the level 2 ones you might find parked on your street, it bumps up a bit, maybe 20 to 25 cents, but it's still totally sustainable. But if you rely entirely on fast or ultra-fast DC chargers, you are paying a massive premium. We're talking up to 65 cents per kilowatt hour. If you exclusively use fast chargers, you risk literally erasing the entire operational cost advantage of owning an EV compared to a traditional gas car.
Oh, and the per kilowatt rate isn't even the only trap out there. You also have to watch your back for hidden fees. For example, some public networks will hit you with a 99-cent start fee just to initiate a charging session. Now, that might not sound like a lot, but if you're doing frequent short top-ups at fast chargers, those start fees quietly add up. They effectively create a negative return on investment for your vehicle.
But don't panic, there is a solid financial defense strategy here. To restore your financial viability, you really have to look into subscription models. Let's say a network offers a monthly membership for around $12.99 a month. By paying that flat fee up front, you can often bring those punishing high-speed rates back down to a very manageable 34 to 37 cents per kilowatt hour during off-peak times. Honestly, if you rely on public charging, doing this math isn't optional, it's mandatory.
But even with the variable costs of public charging, the EV platform still offers some amazing, unique compensation pillars. You've got near-zero mechanical maintenance, no oil changes, way fewer brake pad replacements. You often get tax exemptions, like the Bollo over in Italy. Plus, in a lot of high-density cities, EVs get you free access to limited traffic zones and completely free blue zone parking. You really have to think of these perks as strategic subsidies. They essentially buy you the time and help offset the premium you're paying to manage public charging.
Moving on to part 3, the always-be charging method. Okay, this is where we actually talk about how successful EV owners pull this off without losing their minds, and it requires a major psychological shift. On one hand, you have reactive charging. This is the old gas station mentality. You wait until the gauge is practically on E, you panic a little, and you make a dedicated, highly frustrating trip just to refuel. That is a terrible, high-risk strategy for an EV. On the flip side, you have the background habit. This right here is where the magic happens. It's charging naturally while you are already doing something else. Grocery shopping? Plug in. Sitting at your desk at work? Plug in. Sleeping? Plug in.
There was an EV owner on Reddit who perfectly summarized this survival tactic. The motto is simple: ABC, always be charging. You check your phone apps, you see if your destination happens to have a charger within a reasonable walk, and you just plug in whenever it's convenient. You do not wait for an emergency.
Let's look at part 4, real-world workarounds.
So, what does this actually look like in the real world? Let's hear directly from some owners who are living this reality every single day. This first quote is hilarious but highlights a super common frustration. This user rented an older home and the landlord flat out refused to upgrade the electrical system, basically laughing off EVs entirely. The user said they wanted to tell the landlord to, quote, upgrade your electrical system from the 20th century, end quote. But instead of giving up on the car, they found a workaround. They started relying on a slow charger located just a block away from their office. It completely saved the day, and as a little bonus, slow charging is actually way better for long-term battery health anyway.
Here's another awesome example of the neighborhood routine in action. This user parks their car at a local community college that's less than half a mile from their house. They plug in just before dark, enjoy a nice short walk home, and then walk back the next morning to a fully charged car. By tapping into local community infrastructure like this, a potential headache turns into a remarkably sweet and often free deal.
Now, if you do have to rely on fast chargers, it really comes down to perspective. As this user points out, dedicating 30 minutes once a week to just sit in a parking lot really isn't torture. For a lot of people, it simply becomes dedicated, peaceful downtime. You read a book, you catch up on emails, you drink a coffee. It's just the flip side of that multitasking model we talked about earlier.
All right, we need to be realistic though. Section 5, Winter and Infrastructure Pitfalls.
Because look, it's not all reading books and free parking. If you aren't prepared for external variables, a perfectly good routine can fall apart incredibly fast. Here is a crucial multiplier you absolutely need to remember. 2x. 2 times. Because winter weather battery drain, combined with running your car's heater, means your weekly charging frequency could easily double. So, if you're perfectly comfortable charging once a week in the summer, you have to stop and ask yourself, is my logistical plan flexible enough to handle charging twice a week when it is freezing outside?
You also have to aggressively avoid what I call the single charger trap. If your entire charging strategy relies on one specific neighborhood charger, you are incredibly vulnerable. What happens if it breaks down? What happens if someone else decides to treat that spot like their own personal, permanent parking garage? You always need a plan B. Otherwise, you'll be forced into doing expensive, reactive fast charging at the absolute worst possible moments.
And that brings us to our final section, your EV readiness check.
Let's distill all of this into a highly actionable checklist. This will help you decide if a garage-free EV actually fits your life right now. You need to ask yourself these 5 questions. 1. Do you have a level 2 charger within a 10-minute walk of your home? 2. The absolute holy grail, does your workplace offer charging? 3. Have you checked the apps to make sure those local stations are actually reliable and not constantly broken or occupied? 4. Does your weekly routine naturally place you near chargers for 45 minutes or more? And 5. Honestly, can your schedule handle that 2x winter charging frequency? Based on how you answered that checklist, here is the final strategic verdict. EV ownership without a garage is highly advised and frankly a great strategic move if you have workplace charging or dependable, walkable neighborhood chargers. In those scenarios, the savings on maintenance and parking make it a clear win. However, it is high risk and honestly potentially non-viable if your daily setup requires you to make dedicated, separate trips out of your way just to charge the car. The opportunity cost of your time will quickly outweigh any benefits.
And that leaves us with one final, kind of provocative thought to ponder today. When you buy an electric vehicle without a garage, are you just adopting a new vehicle, or are you truly ready to adopt a completely new logistical lifestyle? Because if you can master the logistics, the rewards are absolutely incredible. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. I really hope this deep dive helps you make the smartest possible decision for your own urban mobility future. Have an awesome day and keep learning.